It's time for the Blazor Power Hour.
Welcome to the Blazor Power Hour.
Introducing the Blazor Power Hour.
No, seriously, it's time for Blazor Power Hour.
Hey friends, it's time for the Blazor Power Hour.
Hello everybody, and welcome to the Blazor Power Hour.
You're checking out the Blazor Power Hour.
Welcome to the Blazor Power Hour.
It's Blazor Power Hour. Go Ed!
Are you ready? Are you set? Got everything all ready to go? Let's do it. Let's do the Blazor Power Hour.
Oh man, that Jeff Fritz guy. He's actually streaming right now, and he had time to jump over and intro me really quick during all of that. That's how awesome he is. Hello, Blazor fans. Welcome to another Blazor Power Hour. Let me know if my microphone's working fine. I had an issue last week with the microphone, so pop into chat. Let me know if it's not working for some reason. I will assume that it is if you don't say anything. It took a little while. I think I was in like 5 minutes before somebody said something last time. It's like an awkward moment there. Smab, I am happy that you are here, my friend, because we're going to talk about something that you helped me with last week. So let me take my giant face off the screen and share this component that we built on the show last week or two ago. And then Simon, or Smab here, he gave me a pull request on the GitHub repo for it and showed me some ideas around component or CSS isolation. And I think something finally did click for me with CSS isolation. And one of those things is I think I write my components a little bit too abstract. And I was focused on like creating this one size fits all checkbox list. And it should have just been two components that did very specific things from the get-go. And sure, there's a little bit of common code that the two things shared, but there really wasn't a whole lot of room to create like a common code base out of it. They're just two things. They're two different things. It took me a little bit of time to realize that. So we ended up with this, and Smab was like, let's even make it so you can select the number of columns, and we'll tie that into a variable. And I thought that was really like a cool idea. We could add so many variables to this thing now that we've decided it is indeed this component on its own and not this abstract thing. So the code that I got from Smab looked like this, and there was a little piece in here that I just personally didn't care for. And it's nothing wrong. This is just an example. It's a piece of sample code, so it's not like I'm critiquing anything that you sent me here. I'm just saying, personally, I don't know if I like inline style blocks in my components. I'm sure you probably don't either. It was just for convenience to show me an example. One thing that's like kind of a pet peeve of mine is I'll create like demo code or something, and somebody will like overly engineer like whatever it is I'm doing. They're like, you should put 15 different abstractions on this thing. Look, it's an example. So I'm not saying that. I'm saying, Smab, I know this is an example, but this example with the inline style gave me some ideas. So I took the thing that I didn't care for and I went nuts on it. And I found out, so there's some new CSS features that I completely was oblivious to. Yeah. So Smab tries to avoid the inline styles. I figured as much, but you know, I just wanted to point out I'm not nitpicking what you sent me. I realize it was just to show what is possible more than anything. And I'm assuming there are some folks that are relying on this though. So this is actually a Razor file, and there's parameters that get passed into some inline style blocks here. And instead of doing this, what we can do is actually use CSS variables instead. And we did a little bit of that on the last show, but I found a whole new feature that I was not aware of. And I'm going to show you how to use that today. And we'll take a look at the finished code real quick. Then we'll jump back and do an experiment to see how I got here. And then we can jump back over to this project and look at it a little more in depth to see how this is all working together. So the thing that I wasn't aware of is that CSS variables can have a default value. I don't know why. It's in the spec. I just never noticed it. So check this out. This is the actual value here, and then the default comes after. So you actually have two arguments being passed into this var function in CSS. So what this says is I'm going to take checkbox grid background color, and if that is null, I'm going to go ahead and just make it white, and then assign that to a scoped value of background color. So I'm kind of actually making like a public private scope even with this. And I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. This is very like high level programming within CSS. You know, the language that everybody keeps saying isn't a programming language. Really? Really, folks? Come on. It's a programming language. Look at this. We've got scope. We've got variables. What more do you want? What more do you want? You don't need to wrap a CS degree around everything we do here just to, I don't know, gatekeep or whatever it is. This is really cool. Let's take a look at how it all works. And once we have all this enabled, by the way, we can have this kind of dynamic input of variables that we pass into CSS from our Razor components. And we can change colors, we can add multiple columns, we can control literally anything that's defined in CSS as long as there's a variable tied to it. And we can also create the variables in a scope that is both global and or local to the component. So I thought this was really neat. I don't know if I've seen anybody do this in production. I haven't personally tried it in production on anything yet. So let's take a look at how it all works. I'm going to use Visual Studio Code today. It just felt like a VS Code kind of day. So let's create a brand new, let's close this editor and we'll create a brand new, I should probably close my app from watching as well. And we will do a new, is it new window or new workspace? How does that work? This is good enough. We'll just close the whole thing. Make sure we close our browser and we will start a new project. I probably need to run a terminal here to do this. All right, so Should I use .NET 6? Let's do .NET 6. So this is my designated folder for .NET 6. So, and this is a really cool feature here as well. If I, oops, it's pasting. Why is it pasting? I didn't mean to right click and paste into that. Where is this thing at? I did it earlier. Maybe I need to have something open first. But you can move these panels now into the code editor, which is super handy. If I could just find out where that went. Where did they put that? I had it open earlier. I'll find that in a minute. All right. So let's do a new directory called experiment. Last time I built something large enough, CSS variables didn't exist, so I'm updating new code with them as I go. Yeah, that's a pretty fair assessment. CSS variables, while they're not like brand spanking new, they are pretty new in the scope of everything that is CSS. So they're on the bleeding edge of stuff like CSS Grid, Flexbox. Those things have been around too, but you know, projects kind of last a while. So you start something in a certain version of CSS and they start adding all this stuff. You can't really change modes in midstream like that. So I'm going to do .NET new Blazor WASM. And I believe that is the template. And we have a new Blazor WASM project. So now we should be able to open this up. Let's see if we're, yeah, open folder. We need to go over to source, repos, and then we should have an experiment in here, and we can open that folder. Yeah, I trust the authors of this folder. I just created it. Thank you very much. It is installing the OmniSharp packages, so we'll give that a second so we can debug all the things and have the all the bits where we need them. Sure, go ahead and add all the rest of the stuff too, and we should be good to go here. Let's make sure we have our terminal up again, and I just had this in the editor. I can't remember how I did it. Hide panel, move panel right. There is a new feature in Visual Studio Code that lets you, there it is, move in. Okay, so you have to click on the tab and then do move into editor area. I like this better. I like this experience much better. And then I can do .NET watch right here. And let me know if these fonts and stuff are working well. You should be able to see the code and the text fairly well. If you do not see those things when I'm typing, you can't read what I'm typing, then let me know. So this is the obligatory like Hello World app. What we need to do is just play around with this. Maybe we'll let's edit the counter component. Let's add some parameters to it, and then we'll add like some CSS features to it as well. I think that's probably a decent one to do. Like maybe we'll create our own button or something that goes to it. Let's see. Let's go under pages. Let's look at our counter and see what's in here. And there is no counter.razor.css file. So we need to add a style sheet for this probably first and foremost. Let's talk about parameters just real quick. For those that might be new to just parameters in general. And let's see here. Let's go into our code and we'll change the way this works. So if we look at our counter component, it doesn't have any parameters on it. And we're not using it anywhere else. It's kind of routed to. So if we want to use that component elsewhere, we can actually just call counter from, say, our index page, and that will create a counter instance on our index page. So if you've ever seen any Blazor examples, did I close? I closed it. It's going to be one of those days, isn't it? I closed all the things. I even closed my terminal, it looks like. Open a new terminal, pop that into a window. All right. .NET Watch. Okay, hot reload is enabled. So now if we go to our index page, we have a counter on it. I'll go ahead and wipe this hello world off here in a second. So we'll have two different instances of counters, so we can kind of play with the two different things there and see how global variables versus local work. And on our index page, you can see counter has no parameters, and it really doesn't need this closing tag either. We can just self-close it like so. Let's add a count by parameter here. So we'll do parameter, and then we will add a private, public, sorry, public int count by, and then our count by value is going to have a getter and setter, and it is going to initialize at 1. And we'll remove this count, or this increment count here, and just say plus equals count by. And that should change our counter so we can have two different versions of the counter. If we go directly to the route of counter, it's going to count by 1, and if we go here, we'll have a parameter of count by count by, keeps dropping. Why is it? Come on IntelliSense. Or autocomplete. Is it actually called IntelliSense in Visual Studio Code? I am not aware. So we'll have a count by of 5 in the counter component on the index page. Let's wipe the hello message. Let's just put a message here that we have an instance of counter on the index page. And we have errors throwing everywhere that current count is used before it is declared. So I created some sort of problem here. I don't see that should be an issue. Public int count by get set. This should be a public property. Why am I seeing an error on this? Let's check the, yes, let's always restart if there is a breaking change. There we go. So it's just our live or hot reload having a little issue with an error that I created as I was typing. So that's a thing. So we have two different instances of counter component. We have this one and we have this one. You can tell they're different because they count by different numbers. So I counted by 5s here. If I come over to counter, I have 1s. So this variable, unlike, say, JavaScript or something, exists in C#. So this is actually setting a property on a C# class. So the next thing I want to show is, since we know what parameters are and how properties work, how we can actually apply this to CSS. So what if we wanted to create some customizable visual part of this counter component? Let's take a look at how we might do that. So right now we have a button class on this counter component. It is using Bootstrap. Let's go ahead and just wipe that class out, and maybe we'll add our own CSS to style this button. So what we can do here is let's throw out this button primary code here and just say custom button. And we'll scope that in a second with some CSS using CSS isolation. So if we look back at our counter component, now it is just a standard HTML button. There's no special styling on that button. So let's add to our pages folder a new file of counter.blazor.css, and this is going to create a corresponding CSS file that is isolated to that counter component. Now, what I find interesting here is Visual Studio Code does not nest these underneath of each other. If you're in Visual Studio, you get a nice hierarchy view of these two files. And unless there's like a plugin or something I'm missing, it doesn't look like we get that here. Just an observation. So let's go ahead and style that button. Since we're inside of, and this is Smab, thank you. You pointed this out to me. Since we're inside of an isolated scope here using CSS isolation, I can safely say button here and not worry about anything else kind of interfering with that CSS. And why is it giving me a yellow? Oh, it's empty. Well, thank you for reminding me, but we haven't really got that far yet. Let me think for a second. I'm trying to remember all of the values that we need to kind of set for this. Let's start with a little, background color. Background color is going to be, let's just do aqua just to make sure that we're styling it. And we're not. So let's double check and see what's going on here. I may need to recompile. It might not have the isolated CSS in here yet, so I might not even need this custom button style. Let's go ahead and take that off. Again, that tip I got last week was we don't need to be so specific here. Let's double check and make sure we are .NET hot reloading still. Looks like we are. Some changes are being updated there. Let's save. Maybe it's not. I didn't see anything happen there. Don't know if it's aware of that CSS file yet. So let's go ahead and stop the watch for a minute and rerun it just to make sure it's getting that new CSS file that we created. And still nothing. Still no style here. Let's see what's going on in the DOM. CSS files are compiled but not watched in .NET 5 until you save the Razor file, but this is .NET 6. What's the rules for .NET 6? I see reboot CSS. That's from Bootstrap. You could see that Bootstrap, by the way, uses CSS variables. We'll talk about that too if we can. I don't think it's compiling the source here. So if we look under experiment styles CSS, it's there. It is there. So something is not quite right about it. So that button color is there. It is just not being applied. Let's try a quick empty cache and hard reload, even though there it goes. Sometimes that's all you need. So we're able to do that. Coloring. Now we need to get rid of the outline around it. So this is just going to be a little bit of tinkering with the CSS, and then we'll go back and put it in the file. So now that we have this actually targeting this selector here, we can say, let's see, is it border is 0? There we go. That got rid of that border. We may actually replace it though. So we can do a padding of 10 pixels, make it a little chunkier. What else might we want to do with this button? So like some hover states and things would be nice. So we'll go ahead and just make this look good. Let's see, that 10 pixels. That's good. Let's go ahead and add the border. 1, 2 pixels solid, and then we will want to color that border. And it nicely marked out the one that we don't need anymore. Border radius, let's do 4 pixels. And we're getting a stylized button now. So we'll take this And we'll go ahead and plop that. I think that's an Alyssa term, by the way. We'll just plump it into our CSS. And then we'd probably want to go ahead and give this border a color as well. The border is solid. Let's see. We'll go ahead and make it aqua. We're just using some terrible colors at the moment just to throw something in there to make sure that we're getting the CSS that we want. We kind of have like a darker outline around it now. That's all good. And then we want a button with a hover over it. And let's go ahead and we'll take the background color. This is always one that I always look up. When I do a background color on hover, does it go darker or does it go lighter when you hover it? After last week, I now have a nice hidden checkbox on a complicated card fade that when you hover over it, the style stays visible when checked. Very cool. So you actually used something that we created last week. Nice. We could keep the stuff the same, and then just as a placeholder again, we'll just show that we've got a hover state here. It doesn't need to be super like. I just want to show these are hover states. We're good. Invisible by 50%. Ah, okay. So you could use that. That actually might work. So so you're saying change the RGB value of the color, change the opacity of it. Nice. Okay. Yeah, that might be an idea. We could probably do that, but I just want to make sure we have some colors here, period. This is actually going to be interesting because I might want to change that button color based on another color, which is something we can also do, but that might be a little too much for the show. So we're already 30 minutes in. We've just got a colored button on the page. So we've got our button here. I love that the hot reload still has all of the instance variables and stuff as we work. That's pretty cool. But this is isolated. We have our button and the button hover. Do we still have a pointer? Yeah, we have the proper pointer icon. This is about all we really need. So let's do a little bit of CSS variables now that we have what we have. So what we can do is I want to take this component and make sure that I have scope here. So I'm going to throw a div around it and just give this a class of counter. This is our counter component. This is the top level element. CSS isolation actually requires this anyway at the current time. So we'll go ahead and just put that there anyway. It's going to help us out. Let's go ahead and move our variables into or move our colors into variables. So what I'm going to do here is just say color -- color. Let's do background color. BG color. And we'll put the aqua marine color in there. I'm using named variables, right, or named values just to be easy right now, but these will be hash values in a minute. And then we'll do the color as aqua. And then we can come down here, and to use variables in CSS, we use var, and then we, inside of the var tag, place the background color. And in here, we will say var color. That's actually the border color, by the way. So let's go ahead and make that a little more explicit. Border color. So these will be the default border colors here. All right, so if we save that, you can see that we haven't changed anything, but we've moved everything to variables. What we didn't show is we didn't show the default mechanism here. So what we can actually do is after this, we could just say aquamarine is the first one, and then aqua is the second one. So if these colors have not been defined for some reason, then the CSS will default to those. So let's actually comment that out for a minute. So I haven't set those colors anywhere now. I've set defaults for them though. So if you look, I've got background color, and I just changed it by accident. So these are now being set by defaults. And if we look, even if we refresh this, that hasn't changed. Just to show, let's throw this side by side so you can see in action that these are actually polling these default values here. So we could say red in this one, and there you go. That's red now. So these are taking the default colors. If we look at the CSS that's being applied to this, by the way, this is actually pretty cool. You can hover over it, and it says that background color is not defined. I know that might be hard to see, and my hotkey is not going to let me zoom in on the text, but you can see it's grayed out here. This is not defined, therefore it is taking red as the value. So if I go in now and I set the background to aquamarine, you can see, ooh, that just lit up. And it actually has a value, and I can click on that, and that red is gone. So the default just got overridden by something that was higher up in the selector chain. So what does that do for us with Blazor? You might be asking yourself. Well, what we can do is pass values down from our component to this. So what we actually need to do here is we can set a parameter up. Oh, come on, not obsolete. Parameter, and then we can say public button, or sorry, string button background color. So we could say button background color is going to be get and set. And I'm not going to give this a default value. The default value is already handled by CSS. And we just need to pass this along somehow. And if you watched last week's show, you can do an inline style for this. We need to build that style here first. So what we want to say is public string button style equals, or sorry, lambda. And then in our lambda, we can do a little string interpolation here, which I had some problems with string interpolation in .NET 6. So I may take this out and replace it with just standard concatenation if that problem persists. So let's see what happens here. And then we'll override the CSS style with this same thing here. We'll say background color right here. We'll say background color is going to be the, I did this wrong. There we go. Background color is going to be button background color, like that. And we'll probably actually need some sort of little if statement or something in here as well when we get this done. In case there's no color set, we just don't apply this. We'll say style equals button style up here. So we're actually creating an inline style, but the inline style is just setting a variable for us. So we can actually pass some user input down to the button and color the button. What we don't want to do is set it if there's no value there. So let's go ahead and just put a little ternary operator in here and just say if the background color string is null or white space, if it's null or white space, and then yeah, sure, console's gonna go nuts for no reason, leave me alone. Then return an empty string, and there are better ways to do this, we'll get to that. If it is set, then go ahead and concatenate some stuff together, which I don't know if I'm getting a false positive here, false negative, whatever you want to call it, but it is not happy with this file. Something just broke. What is going on? When I called is null or white space on background color, it threw a fit. Background color does not exist in the current context. Did I type it wrong? Do I have a typo? I do not. Do not have a typo. String interpolation might be at fault here. Let's try to take that out for a moment. It was causing me issues in another project I was working on for some reason. That Razor compiler is not happy with it. So we could also do it that way. But no, why is it unhappy? What is our compiler doing that, or what am I doing to the compiler that is not a happy camper? Let's try to kill the .NET watch, which seems to be stuck, and do a build. And I built without any issue, so I don't know what this is ranting about. Let's try .NET Watch again. I went so experimental, it cannot handle it. Let's see here. Why is... The tooling is not ready for this, folks. So the tooling does not like my statement that I wrote for some reason, but it does compile it as valid cSharp code, and it's just the compiler's not happy in the compiler they're using for the coding experience is not happy with it. Go figure. Why not? I made it angry. I do that a lot when I'm thinking outside the box. I usually break stuff. Yeah, not sure VS Code is ready for .NET 6 yet. Well, actually, I had a problem with this. I just actually knew, by the way. I had a problem with this in Visual Studio as well. I don't think .NET 6 is ready for this. So it's having an issue with this string interpolation stuff. So let's just see if we can do... Let's try to make it a function. And maybe it'll be happier if it's a function instead of a read-only property. And that didn't make it happy either. So let's move it into a statement. Or from a statement into a very explicitly written function. And see if that helps. It's like highlighting everything in here now. Count by is declared but never used. It's forgotten that this is oh boy. It is a Blazor application for some reason. And if I went over to Visual Studio, it would still do this, I bet. So we won't spend too much time on this. God, this is painful though. Why is it doing this? Let's see if it's happier with an if statement. If let's just say true, just to make it shut up for a second. If true, then, wow, it doesn't like any of this. Let's remove the if statement for a moment. It's choking so hard on this very thing. Ah, well, that shouldn't be. That was a logical error, though. This is so string button style equals an empty string. That should satisfy that, and it's still not happy with any of this. Public is not valid for this item. Yeah, I think we broke it. Let's go ahead and kill all the things and try reopening it. I did some damage with that idea. It's just like, no, you're not going to have that. I've seen string interpolation do that to my projects recently. So we'll do button style. Oh, now it's formatting things all wacky. Thanks for all the extra lines, whoever is in charge of formatting. All right. The button style, if it is set, string dot is null or white space, will give us whether this has been set, because I don't want to pass anything in if this has been set. Ah, wow. Quit injecting code in there, please. And if it is, we'll go ahead and define our variable. The editor is not helping me in any way today. The background color, colon space, and then we will manually concatenate this so it doesn't go ballistic again. And we will place our background color into that tag and then save it. I love the comments here. This is great. Yeah. It was just like throwing its hands up. I'm done. I quit. You're doing things that are hard, and I'm done with it. So, let's see. Okay, so my watch is not running anymore. I need to bring that back up. So terminal, new term, and then I like the terminal into the editor area feature. .NET watch. So we will watch this again, and if this gigantic fly goes in my mouth while I'm on the air here, I will gag. There's a fly in my office, and it's pretty much storming the tower. All right, so we can now apply a button style. If we go back to our index page, we should be able to say button background color equals, we already did red as an all-out default value. So what do we want to do here? Blue. We can just do straight blue and see if it passes in. Look at that. It passed it in, but we do get an exception for some reason. Why did we get an exception? What is the exception all about? Console, tell me what I've done wrong, please. Renderer page counter does not have a matching property of BU. Did I type a BU in the... Where is it getting this from? Does not have a matching property of BU. Let's kick the compiler one more time. Let's rerun that one more time. It seems like it's hot reloading something that's not there. Okay, so there you could see we've set it to blue now. And this is kind of what we did last week, and we tied it to we tied it to an input, a color input, and like went crazy with the color input. But this is the idea. We're passing in this button style inline, and if we look at the code that's generated here, you can see the top level of this div, the counter. Where is this guy at? There we go. You can see the inline style right here. So the inline style is setting that background color to blue, which overrides the CSS value of aquamarine that is up here on the counter level. Because the inline style is more specific than this selector here, it will take precedence over this value and set it. So the default value is red. We've overridden that default value with this background color, and then we've yet overridden it again with an inline style. So the cascade of cascading style sheets is back in action, even with the isolation of CSS isolation. Does it work with div first of type instead of counter? It probably would. It probably would. In case you didn't want to have a counter selector up there. Would make it easier to copy code around. Yeah. I mean, we could try it too. First of type. That should give us our outermost div. I'm pretty sure that does the same thing. That is an equivalent selector. I won't go into like performance stuff. There may be some performance. I mean, I don't know how hard CSS performance can actually hit a site these days. Browsers are pretty good, and CPUs are pretty beefy, even on mobile. That is one amazing emoji comment, by the way. I got to put that on screen. The cascade is for real now. We've released the cascade. So I could take that CSS class off, as SMAB shows here. That first of type works just fine in this instance, because we have that top level div element here in our component. We could even make that a section if we wanted to, etc. But we have this really ugly button now that we can color any color we want. We didn't pass the border color along yet. We could do that as well. Or we could try to write code that would derive the button color from the background color, or the border color from the background color. That would require a little bit more code, but it is something that's possible. So let's see, what else can we do here? I thought this was pretty interesting. I'll throw this in the hat of ideas as well. We have some new filters in CSS, and let me see if I can get this one right. Filter. Filter is going to be contrast 1, and let's see if that does the trick. That is that not the right one? Making sure it doesn't need to go last. I had this working in my other example. I'm not sure I'm using the right. Is it 0? Oh, that is not it. That broke the whole thing. It is not 0. All right, maybe I chose the wrong filter. There is a way to dynamically set the text color. Maybe it was invert 1. But you can, oh, that did the whole background. I inverted the entire background. we may we may need an internal span or something around the text to make it do that. But there is a way to set the text color opposite of the button color as well. I can show that in my other example in a minute. So you can dynamically start like changing other values of your settings based on one setting is my point. Now let's talk a little bit about scope here. Let's remove this because we've already kind of hard-coded defined a default value up at the top here. Let's see what happens if we set, let's take this out for a moment. Or actually, let's just change pages. Let's go to the counter component because we have two instances here. Remember, the one on the home page is set through a property or parameter. The one on the counter page is not being set anywhere. So let's go over to our application, and inside of the www root folder, there is a CSS folder and an app CSS. Let's see what happens if we try to set the color of that counter button from the root of the application. So if I say root here, and then I say dash background, let me make sure I get this right so it doesn't ruin the example. Where's my CSS file at? Where did it go? Did I close the editor on that one? I have too many things open. Oh, there it is. So it is bg-color. So let's set, in our app CSS on the root, we'll do bg-color, and we'll do that red again. And why is this not changing to red? Why is that not changing to red? So if we look, we'll pull this back up full screen. The BG color is set to aquamarine at a higher level than root. So it's not going to default or change that color. It's been explicitly set somewhere else. So we've overridden it at a higher level. Why do we still have console errors, by the way? What is this? Some open iconic stuff is missing. Not concerning us right now. So our aquamarine is set at a higher level than the root, therefore it is not red. We can actually see this, I think, too. If we go back here again, I was trying to find it earlier, but if we go back and let's see, let's actually do an empty cache hard reload just to make sure I'm not crazy. And something broke. So why did that break? I don't recall closing the terminal, but the terminal is closed. So let's try this again. .NET run. And where's it running? Because I don't see it. There it is. Okay. Let's try to get that background color again. You could see these are being overridden by the hover. Is it? What's happening here? Okay, yeah, that's the hover. That's the background color. It's not being hovered anymore. I guess when I'm clicking on it, it's going into the hover state. Really? It's not wanting to work with me here, but there's where background color is set, and I'm trying to find the one in root. Where's root? There we go. There's the root for that one, and I can't find the other root. Let's try looking at it in the source to make sure it is there. Root is red here. It's not the live view, though. That's not the view I wanted to show you all. Let's try... It's not going to let me show it, even though it's happening here. Come on, Chrome, you're better than this. There should be... There it is. Now it's showing it. So, see how it's crossed out? That means it's being overridden somewhere. So this is actually being overridden at the div level of the counter. Because remember, we're setting it at the div level on the component itself. So if we look at our counter razor, our counter CSS, this div first of type is where it's overriding that root value. So that's not the experience I want. I want to be able to set this two different ways. I want you to be able to control it at the root level. If that value is not set, I want that to default to a color, so it's not just breaking the CSS code. And then I also want you to be able to style it at the component level if for some reason you wanted one component to look different than the rest. So let's see if we can set up a global value. So what I'm going to do is actually scope this. And this is really cool. This is going to take advantage of that default value stuff. And I'm going to say counter BG color. Sorry, I put that in the wrong place. I'm going to keep that name. But over here, where it says aquamarine, I'm going to take this out. And I'm going to say var background, counter background color, and move aqua marine there, like that. So now what this is saying, hello new folks just entering the chat there. Oh, I closed the file when I was looking at CSS. Thank you. So let's see what is happening now. So I've moved. You can see where I have an older version of that default value here. This isn't even valid anymore. I don't need that. So let's go ahead and take that one away. I've scoped these variables now, at least this one, to being inside of this div. But they're reading a value from outside the div. So if you're thinking of this in terms of like actual like code, like C# code, let's think about what I just did. Or maybe even if you're from JavaScript, what I'm saying is I have a private value of BG color, and the default for that private background color is aqua marine, and then publicly I have a variable that is called counter background color, and it is using the background color as it, or BG color as its backing field. Remove counter just BG color. I'm not sure what the context is there. So I'm using this BG color as the backing field for it. And I would say something like in the getter, we'd use the BG color, set it to value. I'm just pseudocoding here, so don't shoot me if it's ugly. Whoops, I did that backwards, by the way. It would be set BG color equals value. If this was like C# code, this is essentially what this might look like. And if I was to get that, then I would return the background color. Does that make sense? Am I explaining this well? So the backing field is BG color. This is privately scoped. The public variable is counter BG color. And that is, it's going to use that value if it's set. If no value is set, then I default to aquamarine. The names can be the same if you want. So here's the issue with the names being the same, is I could make it background color, but in the scope of the global application, what am I setting that background color for? I might use BG color scoped inside of other components. That could get really confusing. Like, what am I setting the background color of when I'm at the global part of my application? So in here, I'm not going to use BG color. I'm going to use counter BG color. And that will then go in, override those values. And if I'm still, did I shut it down again? No, I didn't. Good. Let's see. Did I get my red color? I may need to do empty cache hard reload here, and either I have a logical area or error, or there's something not refreshing. This should be red at this point. It's still showing it as being overridden by aquamarine. Why is that? Okay, it's getting some old code, it looks like. This has changed. That doesn't even exist anymore. So let's try to get the .NET Watch to rerun, because it is not. Oh, I did .NET Run. That's why. Okay, that makes more sense. .NET Watch. Old habits die hard. Isn't that true? But it's still not red. Ah, you're hurting me. Come on. I know you should work. I've done this before. Trust me. I know what I'm doing. Famous last words. Yeah, that looks like the old code again. Why am I in the old code mode here? If I look at my CSS, I have removed that aqua color. So it didn't build this correctly. Hot reload scope CSS succeeded. Why is it showing that variable then? That is not there anymore in my code. That is not a thing. There it goes. Finally, after a couple of refreshes, it worked. So now I've got what I wanted. So I've got this one, and we'll throw one more on here, right? Let's go back to the index page. Let's throw another instance on here. Counter. This will be instance 2. This one will actually be red. Just to show you this is doing what it's supposed to do. Even though hot reload is not doing what it's supposed to do. I just added another counter component completely. And it should have 2 of them on the same page, and it is not doing it. Let's try closing that window. Always restart the app if you need to. Please, quit hanging me out to dry. Quit hanging me out to dry. Control click. There we go. Oh, and then this one's white for some reason now. So why did that happen? So BG color is not set on that instance, which is really odd because it should be set at the global scope. It works here. It does not work here. That is very odd. So I'm at a bit of a loss as to why this one's coming out white. It should be red as well. It's very strange that it's saying that it's undefined when it's clearly defined here. How odd is that? Background color is not defined. That is impossible. That is quite impossible because we have, unless it's our component, but our component has this, if it's null or white space, yada, yada, yada. Let's double check yeah. What? So the style is empty. Style tag is empty. Therefore, it should take the red value over anything else. Very confusing. Why would it do that? This is the same idea here. We have a button instance that is setting it red at the global level. It should also set it red at this level too. This has to be a Blazor thing. The browser is not doing that. Is it not first of type anymore? Is that what it is? Let's see. What is another way to say this? It's not... So, first of type... So, SMAB, that didn't work. That's a failure there. No, it's showing first of type twice. As this is both the same type because it is the same component isolated GUID twice. So it would just be just div might work. Yeah, I think that's probably the correct. There we go. So there, our red is overriding. Our variable is overriding here. So our parameter is overriding that one, and so on. So we have that 3 levels of control here. Now, if I come into this root and I remove it, what color will the button be? Let's go ahead and comment that one out and save it. And look now, it's back to that aqua color. So if there's no value set, then if there's no value set, this is our default. So if somebody gets our component and they put it in their application, it looks okay. But if they go to the root of their app CSS file and they give counter background a color, it's going to color it that color. Or they also have the option of just setting it at the parameter level like we did here. So that's pretty amazing. Layla, did you just show up? I am so happy to have you here. You're coming in at the end of the show, though. We just did some serious CSS voodoo that you missed out on. We did some serious CSS voodoo that you totally missed. So we're going to go to the super advanced, finished, completed example now. So you saw how it all got implemented if you tuned in early. So Layla, you get to see the completed project and how that all works, which is going to be really cool. So you get to, yeah, I will recap Mr. Magoo. So here's the recap. Here's the short version of the recap. We have a counter component that I altered to be styled in 3 different ways using CSS isolation. So we have the counter CSS is isolated to the counter component. It is using CSS variables. And it's using CSS variables in a way that lets us break through the isolation when we need to style certain elements in that component. So in my counter component, come on VS Code, work with me. In my counter component, I am dropping an inline style that is only there to set variables within the component to give color to a button. It's not actually writing a full inline style. All it is setting a CSS variable. So in my counter.razor.css, the isolated CSS, I'll go ahead and drop into annotation mode again. My outermost div is setting up a scope of CSS variables here. And I have one called background color. And this is actually a private variable to my isolated component. But it has a public setter because I'm using CSS variables with default values. So I have my CSS variable here that says if counter background color is set, use that color. If it's not set, default to this color. So this is my public setter here. So if you look at this, this is the public setter, and this is the private backing field. So I can set this counter background color publicly from my app CSS file at the root level, and it will override the private field here. You cannot set background color from outside of the component because it is scoped to this div element that is using CSS isolation, and it's isolating it from being set externally. So it's now a private variable. If nothing is set, it uses the aquamarine color. So it doesn't just throw an error or not style because nobody has set it. So I have my default. If I don't set this publicly, then privately it will internally default to aqua or aquamarine. Down in my button code, I'm just using that private backing field, that BG color value. So if I go and look at my application again, you can see this is the default value here. This one I've styled by setting a property on the component. Let's try to find our index page again, or index component. So on indexed, this first instance is setting the button background color to blue because it's passing in an inline style to the component at the div level, which is more specific than the isolated CSS value. So it's even higher specificity, so it actually overrides the color here. So if I come to my index page again, and let's try to move this guy. Let's try to move this guy over just a little bit more. A little bit more. There we go. Now we can see him better. If I come into my component and I say I want that button to be red, I can still override it here at this level. And thanks to hot reload, it is doing it in real time. So I can set it through a property because it's inlining the style here, and it hasn't affected the global style here. But if I want to affect the global style, I can come into my root of my CSS and make that one red, and then any instance of the component that is not styled through a property will get styled globally because I'm using the global setter here for that property that will then get passed to that private member inside the component. So that is the short TLDR version of what we did today. So we took CSS variables and kind of hijacked the fact that they can have a default value. So that's what that syntax here is. If I didn't review that, our CSS variables have a default value. So this is the value, this is the default. If this one is not set, then this one gets used. So in our app CSS, we don't have to have this. If somebody does a NuGet install of our component, it will just work out of the box without going into your application and having to add any CSS values there. If you want to override it, you can, and when you do that, it will override all of the base components. But if for some reason you have two different components on one page and maybe they're for different purposes, maybe they're charts or something, I don't know, maybe they have to have different coloring for some reason, you can go into a property and just set the color in code. So let's look at this in a larger example. We'll go ahead and open recent checkbox list. Close that guy. Hopefully that closes the console when you drop the instance of Visual Studio, so that's not still running somewhere. I have a bad feeling it is. Let's drop a new terminal here. .NET run or .NET watch. And I am in the wrong folder. Do .NET watch again. And I want to say again, like, this is just an experiment that I was playing with. This is not something I've pushed into any type of production. It's not a best practice. Use it at your own risk and see how it performs for you. Let me know if this is feasible or not. So this is a checkbox select list. You can see the selected items down here at the bottom. So it's telling me which item is actually being selected. And doing data binding on that. So we actually have feedback from this component. It's a fully like kind of baked component here. And we can actually control the number of columns in this because we're tying this, slider to the number of columns in our grid for this component. So if we look at the source code for this, you can actually see right here that there's an inline style on this element. And here are the fractional values for the CSS grid that is controlling that element. If I come up here and change this color, we can actually change the background of those checkboxes as well. So that's pretty cool. And then we also have the ability to set some of these properties at the instance level too. So if I go over to my Sandbox app and look at my, I think it's app.razor in this one. I look at app.razor. You can see how this is being used. And I'm even passing along CSS attributes here. This thing is annoying. How do I get it on my way? I don't want to close it completely. I just want it to where I can't see it. All right. I'm passing some CSS attributes along on this one. And I've got the number of columns is the one that is controlling how many columns are in this list when it's displayed. So this number of columns gets passed to an inline style. I'm also appending any custom inline styles that I want, so I can further customize this component if I want to. And I'm passing along a color into that. And this is using something internally here. I took this one level more advanced. So you can see this style equals inline style. I'm using a NuGet package that I created a long time ago on my Blazor State Has Changed show that I do on Friday. And I have this inline style, and I'm using that package. It's called CSS or Blazor Component Utilities, and it has a style builder in it. And I'm saying add the style of checkbox grid columns if there is a value in the columns that is greater than 0. So if I don't set that columns value, it will default to a null, and the null will pick up the CSS default variable. So if I go back to, I'll go back to my instance here. If I don't set columns, if I take that out and save it, which this is throwing an error now. Why is it throwing an error? Namespace app could not be found. Sure. .NET Watch has some room to improve as I get attacked by flies here this summer. I didn't set the column value here. So right now it's pulling the default value from CSS, which is 2 columns. I can also set it globally if I wanted to. And then I can also bind it if I want to. And it is not happy with the hot reload stuff. I think this might be in .NET 5 or something, not 6 is why. So I have the option to set that. It does have a default, so it doesn't choke if I don't set it. So not setting it creates a null, and the null gets interpreted as go ahead and use the CSS default value. So that works, and that's pretty nice. And the next thing is it says if there's any other inline styles, go ahead and apply those. So my component can still use inline styles that I set at the component level. So if I go over to AppRaiser again, that means I can still say style equals and pass in some arbitrary style in here, and it will merge that. It will merge that with the ones that I'm setting through the code inside the component. So I can have my checkbox grid columns. I don't have to necessarily expose every single CSS property as a parameter in here. I can just go ahead and say, if you want to set those things, use an inline style, and I'll merge those for you. And if nothing is set, it's a null, and we'll go with all the CSS defaults that were provided in the component. So we can be as tightly scoped or as loosely scoped with these things as we want to be, with the help of a little CSS magic and a little library called CSS Component Utilities to kind of merge these concepts together in a much bigger way. And that gives us the flexibility here. There's also something going on here I wanted to show. I know we're a little over on time. Hopefully there's nobody else trying to do a show after me. The checkbox is an interesting one, or the check mark rather. So in my check mark, let's see if I got this in this example. I'm pretty sure I did. So the check mark, why can't I see it through this? I want to show it here. The tick mark item, there we go, is blue. And the check mark itself is, let's see, this is going to be on the before. That's why I couldn't see it. The selection color. So I'm going to take the selection color, and if I were to set this, let's do red. Let's see if that does the trick. No, red. It's not letting me. So what I want to show is the colors. It is working. It's not a good example. Let's try that again. Checkbox grid background color. That's not the one I want to set. I have another color I want to set in here. And it's going to magically just change the check mark so that it contrasts the, there it is, selection color. Let's go ahead and change the selection color at the root level. So if we go back to, let's see, we could do it here in AppRaiser, or we could do it at the root level. Do we have a, yeah, theme? We do have a selection color. That's the one I want to change. So if I go in to this selection color, is this live reloading or not? Let's just close that out. If I were to change this to red instead of blue and save it, there we go, it's saved. Notice the color of the check mark changed. If I do, it's kind of teal right now. If I do black, it should be white. There we go. If it's black, it's white. If I do white, it's black. Are you getting the idea here? If it's orange, it should be blue, right? If it's blue, it's orange. If it's purple, what color do you think it'll be if it's purple? Has anybody got a guess? Oh, it's doing it. Never mind. I didn't realize it. I didn't even save it, and it did it. Yeah. So how did that work? That's pretty neat, right? So whatever I do here, it's going to create a contrasting image or a contrasting color. More CSS magic. It has to be in a span. I think that I tried this earlier and it wasn't working. It has to be in its own element for this to work properly. But what you can do is, let's look at the style sheet. And let's see. There we go. So if I set this to purple, selection color is purple. If I look at the check mark, the selection color is also purple, but I'm inverting the color 100%. That's what that 1 means. So we'll take the color and invert the color 100%. And that gives me the opposite color of the selection color. So you can see if I did 0, that is purple. 1 is the opposite. So like 0.5 would be halfway there. And so on. So I've got the opposite. It's a scale of 0 through 1. So 0.5 is 50%, 15%, 95%. You get the idea, I hope. So if we just flip it completely, so we take the variable, but then we filter it and invert it. And there's more. Wait, there's more. Not only can you use filter, but there's also another one that you can use. I'm trying to remember the name of it now. I'm going to say there's more, and then I forget completely what it's called. It's a long one. It's not Max. It is. Let me look this up real quick. It is CSS Photoshop filters. Blend mode, I think, is the one I'm looking for. So all of these are things you can do in CSS now, which is really cool. These are not the right ones. This is old. How dare you? There's background blend mode. There's, maybe it's just blend mode. I remember it's got 3 names to it. It's something dash something dash something. Which one is it? Mix blend mode. So that's the other one that you can use to kind of manipulate these values once they're here. So I took that one that flips it off, but it's still doing it for some reason. It is mix blend mode. And you can say take a color, and you can dodge, burn, inherit, multiply, overlay, screen, offset. You can use these as well to manipulate a color. This is the one I think I was going to show earlier that I didn't get a chance to. Coda-Raptor? To say clever. I don't know if I follow the reference on that. I'm not a big Jurassic Park fan, sorry. So fun fact though, The guy that created Jurassic Park is also, so Michael Crichton is also the guy that created Westworld. If you haven't seen both, yeah, I've seen Jurassic Park. I just don't like Jurassic Park. So, sorry, Layla. We can still be friends, right? So, Crichton wrote Jurassic Park, which there's, 5 of? And he also wrote Westworld, which there's a couple of those as well. There's Westworld, Future World, and some others. Crichton? Sorry. I thought it was Crichton. Crichton. You correct my English, are you, Layla? Just saying it proper now. So he wrote two, not just 2 individual books, but 2 series of books that involve a disaster happening at a happy theme park. What is wrong with this guy? What did he go to, like, Disney World and see, like, Mickey Mouse take off his hat when he was a kid? Or hat? Like, what's wrong? What happened to this guy in his childhood that he wrote these terrifying books about theme parks more than once, more than twice, but enough to do 2 full series on what happens at theme parks in the future? I don't know, but I love Westworld. I'm more of a Westworld person than I am a Jurassic Park person. Yeah, would be a wonderful bio. I probably should wrap up, but before I do, like, I showed how to toggle that that color there by inverting the purple color just through code. If we go over to this as well, we could do this with some of the other filters in addition to this one. So where I've got, like on our button, for example, if we wanted to take like the outer rim of this and set a value kind of programmatically, maybe the hover is a good one. Let's go down to hover on this one. Let's find it first. Hover. So on hover right now, I'm just using, I don't know if this will work on border. This is where things get a little sketchy. I don't know if I could do this on border. But on, yeah, I don't know if, I'm questioning myself now because this isn't, if I change the color here, this isn't going to do what I wanted it to do. No, it's not gap. It's mix, blend mode, burn. Let's try that. Yeah, this isn't going to do what I wanted to do. I probably should have just ended the show while I was ahead of things. It's not doing anything. Because this is applying to the color of the, it'd basically be if there was text on this item, but there's not, so it's not gonna blend it. Difference would give me like kind of an opposite. Yeah, so that's not gonna affect it. It would the check mark, but not this. I could apply it to the text inside, but you can create variations of colors using that. But you got to remember it is on the color attribute, not the border attribute. So I can't use it there like I thought I could. You can go like up a level in your nerdery on this and use HSL values, hue, saturation, and lightness versus using hard-coded colors. And then you can scale them through CSS using math. You can do all kinds of craziness there. Preferred the original Westworld film with Yul Brynner over the series Copper Beardy. You win the internet today. You are the new owner of the internet for 24 hours. Westworld with Yul Brynner is one of my favorite movies of all time. If you haven't seen it, you have homework. Go find it and watch it. It is amazing. If you don't have time to watch the entire thing, let's see. Sorry, Mr. Moog's got a question. If I wonder if you set the color, then made the border use current color, would that work with the filters? No, because the filters aren't applying to the variable; they're applying to the color of the foreground color of the element. So it would mess with the foreground color of the current element if you applied the filter to it. So the border color is not going to have, it's not going to change at all. It doesn't affect the variable. It just affects the applied color. Yeah, it's kind of a catch. It would be nice if you could just apply those. I don't think there's any color functions outside of the stuff that's in CSS. There's some functions in here. There's stuff around hue, saturation, and lightness that you can use. But what I think is missing here is they don't have a way of converting a hex color. If they had a way of converting a hex color to an RGB color or an HSA color in CSS, we could do all sorts of things. These do not exist as far as I know. So we don't have that ability. Not that I'm aware of. So hex to RGB CSS only. I don't think that's possible. So if I go, see, this is in PHP, and that looks like JavaScript actually. So you can do this in JavaScript, but there's nothing. You could do it in C# as well, but as far as I know, this is not a thing yet. So you would have to define each color using HSL, and then you could do it, because you can transform the HSL values, but you cannot go from hex to yeah. See, this is using it here. Use red yeah. You could do it RGB as well. RGB is harder, I think, in my opinion, to scale. HSL is easier to scale. So you could do that. In Sass, you can write it that way. In Sass, you can. I'm trying. I love Sass. I don't want to stop using Sass, but I'm trying to see what's possible without it, because I'm a little overly reliant on it. That's why I'm just learning these CSS variable things now. So I'm trying to get away from Sass, not professionally, but just personally, to try new things. Sass or SCSS? Come on, you know the answer to that one, Layla. Nobody uses SCSS anymore, or SASS anymore. That indented monstrosity, not happening. Why not use the one that looks and acts just like CSS? Like, this is like Photoshop used to be required for this stuff, by the way. Look at this. This is all just CSS now. You can do this to images. Isn't this amazing? This is so cool. Back to my last rant about Westworld. If you don't have the time to watch the full movie, watch the trailer. It is hilarious. Go watch the Westworld 1972, is it? 1972 movie trailer. '73 trailer. Google that. Watch the epic video that is the trailer, and there is a scene. I will try to pull it up here before I go. I don't want to play too much of this because I'll probably get like a DCMA thing, but I'll show you where to look. I think it's near the end. Right here. So at a minute 40, I love old school special effects. When you see a dude bust through this wall, let's see if I can catch it here. It may not come across on stream well. Watch when the wall breaks. Did you see it? It's hard to see, but you can see the real brick is here, and there's actually like a line where it divides where the brick is lighter, and it's like made of like a fabric or something, and you can see the wall like shimmy as it gets broken through. Is there a slow-mo on this? It's hilarious. I love it. Playback speed 0.25. This is how much of a Westworld nerd I am, by the way. Watch this. Kaboom! You can see the wall just shake. You can see the wall shake. I love that kind of quirkiness of it. But the movie holds up. Besides the special effects, the movie itself holds up. It's so entertaining. Think of it as a prequel to Terminator or something. It's so much fun to watch. That's one of my all-time favorites. So, enough said. I'm way over time. That was our Blazor Power Hour plus 40 minutes plus some movie reviews from 1973. And thanks for everybody that showed up and cheered me on through these tough times of Hot Reload doing what Hot Reload does. Layla likes it. You like the CSS stuff, huh? Appreciate it. We will have to do some shows soon and talk about some expression trees and things. That'll be fun too. Oh, more movie reviews. That's what you meant. Okay. That makes more sense. Less CSS, more movie reviews. You know, that's my strong suit is the movies. I'm just teasing. I know what you mean. I'm joking. I'm giving you a hard time. All of it. All right, everybody. Take care. I think let's see if we have our schedule here today. I know TJ is he's still streaming with us. TJ Vantil is still streaming with us. But he has made a new career choice, and as much as we have loved having TJ as part of our team, he's moved on to new things to work on. But he is still streaming here with us, which is amazing. So he's got React Wednesday coming up here in just an hour. If you want to check out some React code, make sure you stop by. Tomorrow we normally do a VR show, Alyssa and I, but Alyssa is busy tomorrow with a full afternoon of Angular content. So make sure you tune in tomorrow if you want to learn Angular. So we do all the web stuff here. We don't leave out any of the web technologies on our channel. We love Blazor and React and Angular all the same. Maybe not me, but our channel does. Our channel does. So make sure you tune in the rest of the week and say hello to TJ this afternoon at 12:40 or 12 o'clock. 12. What did I say it was? 12:45. 12:45. So make sure you say hi to TJ and bye you all. Bye y'all. That one's for you, Layla. I know how much you love Sticksville. You want to come visit someday? Be a Sticksville Sticksvillian. Have fun, everybody. Take care. Bye.